Somehow my recording just starts without me pressing a button. So anyway, we're gonna continue with the chapter 3, yoga, the yoga of wisdom, in the book of the Living Gita, written by Sri Swami Satchidananda. In the first chapter, we saw Arjuna, the warrior king who is supposed to protect the land from the unrighteous, come forward to do the job with the help of Sri Krishna. But when he saw his own kith and kin in opposition, he was moved by sentimentality and momentarily forgot his duty. He underwent physical changes, shivering of the body, drying of the throat, and nearly fainted from despondency. He decided not to fight. His bow, which had never failed, dropped from his hand. He lost courage and sat silent in his chariot. To interpret the situation allegorically, we should each think that we are Arjuna. Very often we fail to perform our duties because we get involved in personal attachments. For example, thinking it's mine, it's dear to me, how can I do away with this? Wherever there's this personal attachment, sentimentality arises and we fail to do our duties well. This is Arjuna's situation. Now Krishna will try to remind Arjuna of his duty, that the entire purpose of the Gita, that is the entire purpose of the Gita. It is not that Sri Krishna is interested in making Arjuna fight a war and destroy some wicked people. Had he really wanted to do only that, he could have done so with just a snap of his fingers. He doesn't need Arjuna or anybody else. Arjuna is only an excuse to show the entire world how people should perform their duties. Sloka 1. Sanjaya said, when Krishna saw Arjuna overcome with sentiment, despondent, eyes blurred with tears of despair. 2. The blessed Lord said, from whence arises the shameful and cowardly dejection, Arjuna, which at this dangerous moment bars the way to heaven? Commentary. He uses these words, unmanly, heaven-barring, and shameful dejection, to kindle Arjuna's pride. 3. Yield not to weakness, it does not suit you. Shake off this petty faint-heartedness. Stand up, scorcher of foes, wake up. Don't we often act like despondent Arjuna? Oh, I just don't know what to do. I can't do it. I can't. I have heard this kind of mantra from many people. I say, you can do it. You have the capacity. No, I can't. You still might say, if you keep on repeating, I can't, I can't. What is it but feeble-mindedness? Instead, just say, I can, and you can. Nothing is impossible. But still, Arjuna uses his own arguments, which seem to him very reasonable, to expound his view. 4. Arjuna said, O Krishna, how can I ever fight with the venerable Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship? Commentary. My grandfather Bhishma and Drona, my own archery master, are there. Don't you see them? They're worthy of my worship. You know that? It's true, but what should come first if the only choice is doing or sparring his own master? If he must choose between these, his duty comes first. Why? Because he's not really destroying the teacher. Sri Krishna explains that later. But until then, Arjuna goes on with his own intellectual arguments. Finally, after all that, he reaches a point where he says, 5. It would be better for me to live as a beggar than to kill these great souls who have been my teachers. Even if I were to kill them, my enjoyment of wealth and desires in this world would be stained with their blood. 6. The sons of Dhritarashtra stand before us. I do not know which would be better for us to kill them or them to kill us. If we slay them, we won't even want to live. 7. I'm weighted down with weak-mindedness. I'm confused and cannot understand my duty. I beg of you to say for sure what is right for me to do. I am your disciple. Please teach me, for I have taken refuge in you. It's a beautiful sloka. I'm your disciple. Instruct me. The Bible says, ask, it shall be given. Here Arjuna is asking. He realizes his situation. He's come to know that he knows nothing. That is the best understanding, because if you know that you don't know, you will want to know. If you don't know that, you won't even want to know. If someone comes to tell you the truth, you will say, I don't need it. That's why the proverb, if a person knows not that he knows not, ignore him. If he knows that he knows not, go teach him. If he knows that he knows, go learn from him. So here's Arjuna ready to learn. The qualifications of sincere student are clearly shown here. When you go to a teacher saying, I know a little bit, can you add a little more? Or I know, but you can't, can you verify it? You're just going there to check your capabilities, not to learn anything new. If you want to learn, go empty and open. I'm an empty cup, please pour in all you can. If you go with a cup already full, even if a teacher pours something good, where will it go? It's not that he or she is miserly. The teacher would like to pour, but it will overflow and go to waste. So empty your cup. There's a good Zen story of a student who went to a Roshi, a teacher, demanding to be taught the secret of enlightenment. Instead of saying something, the Roshi began to pour the student a cup of tea. The cup became full, yet the master kept on pouring, and the tea spilled over onto the floor. My cup is full, master. Why do you keep on pouring more and more? The student asked. Like this cup of tea, your mind is already filled with something. If I pour my knowledge into your cup, it will just go onto the floor because there's no room in your mind for it. You will interpret my instructions according to what you already think. Your mind will not be able to accept the truth I give you. But Arjuna proves to be a good student and an honest person when he says, 8. This is sloka 8. I do not see any remedy for this deep grief that parches my senses. Even if I were to achieve prosperous and unrivaled royalty here on earth and even over the heavens. 9. Sanjaya said, after speaking this way to Krishna, the Lord of the senses, Arjuna, who's the terror of his enemies, said, I won't fight, and became silent. After saying that, Arjuna was silent, waiting for Sri Krishna's instructions. Sri Krishna cast a beautiful smile at him and began to speak. In these next few verses, he explains the immortality of the Atman, or the Self. The Bhagavad Gita came into existence, commentary. 10. Then, O great King Krishna seemed to smile and spoke these words to the despondent warrior in between the two armies. Okay, commentary. The Bhagavad Gita came into existence mainly because of the delusion and despondency of Arjuna. On the battlefield, when Arjuna saw all his teachers, relatives, cousins, and others, he felt sad. Momentarily, he forgot his duty as a warrior protector and didn't want to fight. He wanted to back out. But at the same time, being the learned person that he was, he couldn't just say, I'm despondent. He tried to hide that feeling by intellectualizing and saying, oh, what's the use of this fighting? After all, even if I win the kingdom, it's not going to last so long. Why don't we just allow these people to enjoy themselves? By killing all these people, we ourselves may ultimately end up in hell. See? He made all kinds of excuses using various forms of logic. Sometimes we do that just to escape our duty. Meanwhile, Krishna, the teacher, was just looking at him, nodding his head and smiling. All right, come on, let me see how much you've learned. Go ahead, exhaust your vocabulary and all your arguments. Then finally, toward the end, Arjuna admitted, sorry, I'm simply blabbering. The fact is, I don't know what to do. Please, sir, just tell me what to do. I'm ready to do it. I give up my ego. I depend on your advice. Thus, he proved himself to be a good student. All his arguments were futile. He realized that all his learning wasn't helping him. And it is at this point that Sri Krishna started talking to him about the nature of the pure self, the Atman, which is indestructible. At the same time, he tells Arjuna that having come into this world, each one must perform his or her duty. You have been born here as kshatriya, he says, a king, a protector. You have to do your duty. You're not doing it for your sake, but for sake of everybody, to protect the innocent from the wicked. And that's how he begins. 11. You're grieving for those who should not be grieved for, while uttering would-be words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. Commentary. Here, Sri Krishna gives the first step in yoga, because all our understanding and practice should be based on knowledge of the immortality of the self, which is what we aim to realize. These verses directly give the theoretical background of yoga, which is called Sankhya. That's why the entire second chapter is called Sankhya Yoga. Those who have read about different Hindu schools of thought may have heard Sankhya as something different, but what Sri Krishna calls Sankhya is direct information about the self. First, he explains the situation to Arjuna. You haven't harmonized your thought, word, and deed. You're thinking one way by speaking another and acting in still a different way. You know the truth about these people. You have even called them wretched and wicked. They're not afraid to commit the worst crimes, yet you say some compassionate words and fail to perform your duty. So there's no harmony between your thoughts, words, and actions. Such a person falls from yoga. Thus, he warns Arjuna about this falling. 12. There never was a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor any of these ruling princes, and neither will there ever come a time when we cease to be. Commentary. In terms of Atman, the reality of self, we always are, we always exist, is not that we were once non-existent, have now come, and will stop existing later on. 13. That which is embodied experiences the body's childhood, youth, and old age, and also in time acquires another body. This does not disturb one whose mind is calm. Commentary. One with a calm mind isn't affected when the body undergoes changes. It was conceived, it grows up, dies, then decays and decomposes. There is impermanency in the body. How can that be immortal self? So Sri Krishna is explaining the nature of death. And here he gives the difference between the permanent and impermanent, the real and the unreal. 14. As the senses contact the objects of the senses, feelings of heat and cold, pain and pleasure occur, Arjuna. These sensations come and go. They are impermanent. Patiently endure them, great prince. In fact, that person who is not tossed about by sense experiences and always stays balanced in pain and pleasure is fit to experience immortality. 16. What is not has never been, and what is always is. This truth about the real and the unreal has been realized by the seers. 17. Know that all this vast universe is pervaded by which is indestructible. No one can destroy what is everlasting and imperishable. 18. The indwelling one is eternal, indestructible, and immeasurable. The bodies of the indwelling one are impermanent. Therefore, Arjuna. 19. Whoever thinks that Atman or the self does the killing or can be killed misunderstands. That self doesn't kill, nor is it ever killed. Commentary. Who is a seer? Who really knows the truth? The one who distinguishes between the unreal and the real? This is discriminative knowledge, or viveka. With discrimination, the permanent, which is never changing, is distinguished from the ever changing, but the permanent and the impermanent are not completely different. When we say that something changes constantly, there must be something to change. Without that something, there cannot be any changes. Then what changes? The names and the forms of the primordial essence, which is always there. The one is always there, but it appears to be many. This basic oneness is what's real. For example, let's take water and say it is reality. Steam is one expression of it, and ice is another. But in water, steam, and ice, you see the same essence, nothing but H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. Even though we see the changes and work with them, we can always remember that there is something permanent behind them all that's clearly said here and is referred to as seeing the truth. If ever we want to do something, we should keep an eye on the reality and then do it. If we miss that reality, whatever we do on the superficial level will collapse one day. It's something like going to a lovely site to build a nice yoga ashram, a training facility there. You have decided on it, but somehow you come to know the plot isn't good for construction. The soil is loose and nothing can grow there, or the soil is too full of clay and won't support a good sewage system. The location is rejected, however beautiful it is. The following is a very well-known sloka, 20. It is not born, and it does not die. Unborn, eternal and ancient, the self is not killed when the body is killed. Commentary. He's actually preparing Arjuna. It's good to know this also because many are so afraid of death. Why? We lose sight of our immortality. We lose sight of our being Atman and think constantly of becoming that. Sri Krishna simplifies death. It's surprising to see how easily Sri Krishna talks about it. That's why in the East particularly people don't seem to worry much about death. 21. Whoever truly knows the self, indestructible, eternal, birthless, and changeless, in what way would such a person kill Arjuna? Who would be killed? 22. Just like casting off worn out clothing and putting on new ones, that which is embodied casts off worn out bodies and enters others that are new. Commentary. If somebody takes off his worn out shirt and says, "I'm going to get a new one," will you cry over it? Death is something like that. You have a new shirt and you show everyone proudly. See how new it is? No wrinkles, so beautiful. But when you start using it, it gets dirty and wrinkled. You keep washing and ironing it, but at a certain point that can be done anymore. So you just discard it. The body's like that, and that's how we should think of death. But the self isn't like that. 23. Weapons do not affect the self. Fire does not burn it, water does not wet it, and wind does not dry it. 24. The self cannot be pierced or cut, it cannot be burned, moistened, or dried. It is endless, all-pervading, stable, immovable, and everlasting. It is said to be unmanifested, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing all this, there is no cause to grieve. Why? Because the self is not of nature's elements. All the elements are products of that same essence, thus they can't affect it. They're the gross expressions of it. After saying something about the immortal principle of Atman, Sri Krishna takes a different tack. Now I've told you about your immortality, but you still may not want to believe this because it seems like mere theory. You may still have some doubts and insist. It is born and will die, all right, but even if that were so, why worry about it? 26. Even if you imagine Atman, the self, continually taking birth and dying, even then, mighty Arjuna, there's no reason to grieve. It's natural that whatever comes will go. The names and forms come and go. They constantly change, but the essence behind it always stays the same, always. 27. Whatever is born will undoubtedly die. Whatever is dead certainly will be born. You should not mourn what is inevitable. in, invadable. 28. Arjuna brings originality, are all unmanifested. Arjuna, beings okay. 28. Arjuna, beings originally are all unmanifested. At mid-state, they are manifested, and unmanifested again at the end. What is the point of lamenting? 29. One may perceive the self as full of wonders. Another speaks of it as marvelous. Another hears it as wonderful, yet none completely understand it. 30. This self, which exists in everyone, the indweller, is invulnerable, Arjuna. Therefore, you do not have to grieve for anyone. Commentary. It's always changing, just watch the changes and enjoy them. Now Sri Krishna takes still another viewpoint and a more worldly view. 31. Furthermore, looking at your own duty, you will see no reason to waver, for certainly there is nothing higher for a kshatriya than a righteous war. Commentary. A kshatriya is someone of the warrior or ruler caste and is supposed to protect the righteous from the wicked. A king is a kshatriya, and the duty of a king is to maintain law and order. That's why he's a ruler. Krishna is reminding Arjuna of that. Now the war has come, you must uphold righteousness. By retreating from it, you'll allow unrighteousness to thrive. That's not fulfilling a kshatriya's duty. And if he doesn't do his duty, what will happen? Here Krishna gently pricks Arjuna's pride. 32. Happy indeed are the kshatriyas Arjuna called to fight in such battle that comes of itself like an open gate to heaven. 33. But if you don't fight when it's your duty to do so, you lose your honor and incur sin. Commentary. You won't be doing the job of which you were created, which is your svadharma, your own duty. Not only that, but 34. People will continually recall your shame, and for one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. Commentary. What will they think of you? All these days people were talking about your greatness. Don't you know that? Don't get into the shame. 35. The great charioteers will suppose you withdrew from battle out of fear. Those who thought so highly of you will take you lightly. Commentary. You may have your own excuses. You may say you're compassionate and don't want to kill them. But do you think they'll believe that? No. They'll say you're a coward. You were highly esteemed by these people. Hold on to their esteem. 36. And your enemies will deride your strength and slander you. What could be more painful? Commentary. Sri Krishna makes 3 different points here. First, he tells Arjuna about the immortality of the Atman. Then he says that even if it were possible for the soul to be born and to die, there's nothing to worry about it anyway, because coming and going are inevitable. I don't know why I can't say this word today. And third, speaking from a more worldly standpoint, he tells Arjuna to perform his duty by reminding him that if he ignores his duty, he will incur sin and shame, which is worse than death. 37. If you're killed, you will gain heaven. If you're victorious, you will enjoy the earth. Therefore, rise up, Arjuna. Resolve to fight. It's a little tough to read this text out loud, especially when it has so many words in different language. And I would tell you that English is my second language, but I speak English better than the original language, so I can't really, I have no excuse for that. But I decided that perfection is overrated, and it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not be perfect, and it's just fine. Yeah. So what? Commentary. But when I say arise and fight, don't forget that you're acting on my behalf, not for your own sake. You have been created for this purpose in my cosmic plan, and you're only fulfilling that purpose personally. You don't have anything to do with these things. Hare Sri Krishna begins speaking about the path of Karma Yoga. Hare. Here Sri Krishna begins speaking about the path of Karma Yoga. 38. Seeing the same in pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat in battle just for sake of the battle, then you will be sinless. Commentary. The cause is just. You're simply acting as an agent, so whatever the outcome may be, it's not going to affect you. 39. You have been given the ideal of self-knowledge. Now, hear the practical wisdom of yoga by which, Arjuna, you can break through all the bonds of karma. Ooh. All the bonds of karma, imagine. Okay, commentary. In this Sankhya Yoga chapter, there are two sections. Sankhya, the theoretical part, and Yoga, the practical part. Merely knowing the theory is not enough. Put it into action. You may know the whole cookbook by heart, but you'll still be hungry if you don't cook the food and eat it. You should understand these 2 points, Sankhya and Yoga. Both are important. Why does Sri Krishna stress both? Because some people simply sit and inquire about the Atman. Who am I? I am Brahman, the Absolute One. Soham, I am that. This is sheer Jnana Yoga, the path of discriminating wisdom. Others plunge into activity even without knowing the basic principles. There should be a beautiful harmony between theory and practice. Then life is more enjoyable and fruitful. That's the greatness of Raja Yoga, or to use our familiar term, integral yoga. You blend theory and practice. You apply the theory in your day-to-day activities. Sometimes people say, probably it's too late for me now. I don't know how long I will live to practice these things. I don't have much time, or I'm too old to do all this. I've wasted my life. But here Sri Krishna gives confidence to such people. 40. In these practices, no effort made is lost, nor are there adverse effects. Even a little practice of this dharma protects one from great fear. Commentary. Even a little practice of this dharma protects one from great fear. That's the great advantage of yoga practice. With an understanding of theory and principle, even a little practice won't be wasted and will never cause adverse effects. Suppose you construct a house, you build the walls, and then say, I spent all my money, I don't have enough to put on the roof. All the energy you use to build the walls is wasted. It's the same with all worldly things. If you begin, you have to go to the very end to get the benefit. But in yoga practice, it's different. Even if you practice hatha yoga postures and breathing for one day, at least you'll be relaxed on that day. It's like eating. Even if you eat on just one day, at least it will take care of that day. It won't go to waste. That's why Sri Krishna says that even a little bit is good. Try it. If you like it, take more. No bad after effects like poisonous drugs that leave ill effects. 41. If your mind is unsteady and wandering, many branched and endless are the thoughts and choices. When your mind is clear and one-pointed, there's only one decision. Commentary. Krishna addresses Arjuna about the difference between the people of firm and infirm mind. It's very simple. For the firm mind, there is only one decision, but for the infirm mind, many branches are endless. Are the decisions. He uses beautiful Sanskrit word vyavasayam for a firm mind. Vyavasayam in Sanskrit means agriculture. To reap the harvest, cultivators needs firm minds with one conviction, that by doing such and such, I will harvest this much. With such conviction, they do everything toward fulfillment. Good cultivators never change midway. They don't prepare the soil and sow the seeds somewhere else, nor will they sow the seeds and then say, I don't have time to take care of it. They continuously use their efforts until they reach their goals. That is what is meant by a firm mind. So often we come across a fleeting type of mind. People with such minds don't stick to one thing. They choose one, then their mind soon becomes dissipated. Something that is worth obtaining will come overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. A seeker needs a firm conviction. My goal is very high. It is highest goal that, once achieved, will make me achieve everything else. As the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God. All else will be added onto you. Having that big goal, we can't expect results overnight. A firm-minded seeker says, I have to give all my effort. Total one-pointedness with unwavering mind. That seeker will certainly achieve what he or she wants. But the others constantly change. If something brings a little irritation or a little difficult, they say, let me leave it. I'll try something else. It may be easier and cheaper. They keep on switching. It's like digging many shallow wells and not finding water. Sri Krishna clearly gives the difference between these two kinds of people. With a firm mind, there's only one decision and one goal. Actually, there's no difference in goals between two firm-minded people. This is important to know. You're convinced of the highest goal. Another person is also convinced. Both are firm-minded. And that firmness, the end is one and the same. The people who solve a mathematical problem will always find the same answer for that simple problem. There's only one right answer, but there can be many wrong answers. For the weak-minded, there are many wrong answers. Then they try something, and when it's no good, they erase it, try again, erase it, try again. But to the firm mind, there's only one conclusion, one answer, one goal that never changes. A sincere seeker should have that total conviction about the goal. Then sadhana, spiritual practice, becomes easier. You're firmly convinced, and with that firm mind you begin. Then nothing will stop you. Imagine a fisherman who really wants to catch a fish. He's in a small boat in the middle of the lake. It's raining, chilly, and windy. He casts his line and keeps his eye only on that. Nothing disturbs him. Just to catch a little fish, how much he forgoes. He could be sitting comfortably at home in an easy chair, but he wouldn't catch a fish that way. For a simple thing, one needs so much concentration. When you keep a keen eye on the goal, you won't think of bodily difficulties. However much physical suffering is there, it doesn't matter. You won't even think of eating. You won't even sleep. People might say many things about you. Some might tease you. Some will say you're wasting your time. But you won't listen to those things. You won't be distracted even by nice things. No one can move you from your purpose. Leave that. Come on. There's something nice on television, a good movie. But you say, no, I'm catching a fish. I won't budge an inch until I do. Such a person is a true fisherman. For others, it's just a hobby. If they don't catch it, they think it's too much. Forget it. You see the difference between the firm mind and the infirm mind. 42. In flowery discourses, the unwise focus on the letter of scripture and say there is nothing else. 43. With minds full of desires and heaven as their highest goal, they speak mostly of rites and rituals which they believe will bring pleasure and power. 44. Those deeply attached to pleasures and power are not able to fix their minds one-pointed in meditation and enjoy samadhi, super consciousness. 45. The Vedas discuss three gunas. Arjuna, transcend the three gunas and you will be free of the pairs of opposites, ever balanced, free of wanting to get or keep anything, and centered in your true self. Commentary. When Sri Krishna mentions the pairs of opposites, he means all dualities, such as pleasure and pain, profit and loss, praise and blame. 46. For those already enlightened, the scriptures are as useful as a wet water reservoir during a flood. To enlightened person, all the scriptures are useless. When there's water everywhere, what's the use of a small well or even a reservoir? A reservoir is needed when there's no water anywhere. Then at least you have some water to drink. But when there's water everywhere, who worries about a reservoir? It's the same way for an enlightened person. Everything is there. He knows what's what. There's no need for scriptures to tell him. Here's a simple analogy. You know you're living, don't you? Do you need scriptures to tell you? Yes, you're living. That's what enlightenment means. The one who knows what is to be known doesn't need scriptures. That's the essence of the 46th sloka. But that doesn't mean scriptures are unnecessary. They're something like a ladder. The one who has gone up doesn't need a ladder anymore. But what about the others still on the ground? They have to go up too. So at least for their sake, keep the ladder. Okay, 47. I hope you can follow this. I don't know if it's hard to process the information that you hear. But I hope you can. 47. As for you, do the work that comes to you, but don't look for the results. Don't be motivated by the fruits of your actions, nor become attached to inaction. Commentary. This is an oft-quoted sloka. Your duty is to perform the act, but not for its fruit. Claiming the fruit of your actions is the forbidden fruit spoken of in the Bible. That was the first commandment given by God to the very first man, Adam. That commandment is given to Atman also. Adam and Atman and even Adam are all more or less the same. Atman and even Adam, like an atom, are all more or less the same. Adam, Atman, and atoms just function. Ask an atom, why are you constantly revolving? It's none of my business to know that. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It just acts. It never worries about the results. That's what Sri Krishna says here. You're not to be affected by the act. 48. Equanimity of mind is yoga. Do everything, Arjuna, centered in that equanimity. Renouncing all attachments, you'll enjoy an undisturbed mind in success or failure. Commentary. Equanimity of mind is yoga. Keep up that tranquility while allowing Prakriti or nature to function through you. Sri Krishna goes on. 49. Work done for the sake of some results is much lower than that done in mental equilibrium, Arjuna. Wretched are those motivated by the fruits of their actions. Sometimes, commentary, sometimes the Sanskrit term is translated as miser instead of result seeker. Because anyone who does something just to get something in return is not a giving person. If you're a giving person, you don't expect anything in return. If you expect even a little in return, how can you say you're giving? You give and you get. Then if you don't get, you won't give. Such a person is wretched, always thinks of getting. If you give, do it for the joy of giving. This is an important verse to remember. Wretched are the result seekers. Imagine that you have arrived at a hotel. A porter immediately opens your car door, picks up the luggage, and takes you to your room. Isn't that nice service? Picture his face. So much joy is there. Particularly if you get out of a big car dressed very well. You might have only a small suitcase which you could easily carry yourself. Just behind you, another car may pull in a simple car. The people in this car may have 3 or 4 suitcases, but The porter won't go to them. He runs to help you instead. After you get to your room, if you simply say thank you, look at his expression. He'll be completely dejected, even angry, because there are pits in his actions. That's why he waits for tips. A tip is nothing but an inverted pit. A tip is nothing but an inverted pit. But what if, as you get out of the car, you see a good friend of yours going into the same hotel? He just picks up your suitcase. Please, I'll take it for you. He brings it to your room and leaves. He won't even wait for your thanks, let alone a tip. Both men did the same job, who really enjoyed what he was doing and kept a calm mind. The one who did it for the joy of doing, he's a karma yogi. The other one is a miser and is wretched. If he doesn't get it the tip, or even if it's a little less than he expected, he's unhappy. 50. The one who has trained the mind to stay centered is equanimity in this life, has cast aside both good and evil karma. Therefore, by all means, practice yoga. Perfection in action is yoga. I often quote this sloka as a definition of yoga. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. Perfection in action is yoga. An act becomes perfect when you do it with all joy and without expecting anything in return. All other acts, however wonderful they are, however beautiful they look, whatever religious label they get, are still imperfect acts because they will affect the mind. Then you're not free from feeling of profit or loss. You might ask, why can't I do something and get some merit? You say to let go of all the results, but what about good results? What's wrong with that? Sri Krishna's reply is that whether they're good or bad, they're going to bind you because the cause of birth and death is karma, actions and reactions, both bad and good. If you ask, how about the good acts? It's like a bird saying, take away this dirty steel cage and give me a nice golden one. It looks prettier, but it's still a cage. You're born as a result of meritorious deeds also, the fruits of which you want to taste. It's better to renounce the fruits of all your actions. But of course, it's not that easy to renounce both good and bad to begin with. Therefore, we sometimes suggest instead of bad acts, do good, at least for the sake of merit. But whatever it is, good or bad, it affects you in some way and brings birth and death. That's why at a certain point, you are advised to renounce both. When you do that, you just perform your own duty without any attachment. This keeps your mind clean. There's no reason to get disturbed, no disappointments, no grief, no fear, no competition. Now we come to the most important and oft-quote sections of the second chapter, the Sita Prajna Lakshana, the description of the enlightened person. Arjuna says, you seem to be talking a lot about Sankhya and Yoga, the theory of the practice. Are there people who have achieved this goal, who act with this realization underneath everything they do, whom you would call enlightened people? Are there people whose minds are always steady and tranquil, who perform perfect actions always? If so, let me hear about them. Enjoying 51. Enjoying equanimity of mind, renouncing the fruit of their actions, free of the bondage of rebirth, the wise undoubtedly go to a stainless state. 52. When your understanding transcends delusion, you are indifferent to things you hear about and things yet to be heard about. When you've understood what it is to be understood clearly, without any doubt, then you become indifferent to things you hear about or to those yet to be heard of. If such a person hears of something, he or she can say, well, I know that already. And if another says, oh, but there's something more to be heard, the first one can reply, I don't have to hear anymore. These are all the qualities of a person who has reached the height. In the Upanishads, it said, for enlightened people, there is nothing that is to be done or not to be done. Such people have risen above these duties. They have no personal responsibilities. There is nothing they have to do or should not do. This do and don't do no longer affects such people. But until that time, certain things are to be followed. You have to do certain things and stop doing some other things. Mostly these things are two guidelines, but there's another one also. 53. When your mind, which has been tossed about by conflicting opinions, becomes still and centered in equilibrium, then you experience yoga. Commentary. It's a beautiful sloka. After being tossed back and forth by so many conflicting views, slowly you're pushed up and up. One day you rise to the heights, then you're no longer tossed between these dualities or differing opinions for and against, good and bad. When your intelligence is shaken by the conflicting opinions of others, don't get upset over it, because you know the truth. Just accept their opinions as mere words. You simply feel, yes, that's what they feel. Let them feel that way. It may appear to be conflicting, but you give the freedom to others to think the way they want and say whatever they want. The enlightened person is not affected by that. Slokas 54 and 72 are very important, where they describe the one of steady wisdom. The summary of all these slokas can be said in one word: equanimity. The person of steady wisdom is one who retains equanimity in all situations. Absolutely nothing shakes that person. Even though he or she may sometimes appear to be shaken, it's just an act to educate others. But such a person isn't really shaken. Sthita prajna, steady consciousness, is explained in Sloka 54 to 72. How one is balanced between the dualities of pleasure and pain, profit and loss, praise and blame. Keeping your balance through all the ups and downs is yoga. The sum of it all is equanimity, is yoga. Arjuna asks the key question next. 54. O Lord, what is the sign of one of steady wisdom who is always in samadhi, super consciousness? How does this person talk, walk, and sit? Commentary. Arjuna is saying, please just let me know how someone like that will behave in day-to-day affairs. Isn't it a wonderful question? We should thank Arjuna for having asked this question. Probably Krishna wouldn't have said all this otherwise. That's why we say Arjuna is the calf. He goes forward and says, I'm hungry. And the cowherd boy Krishna milks some truth from the Vedas for the sake of Arjuna. Some spills out and we all enjoy it. It's a long chapter, man. Okay. I feel a little bit tired. These slokas are really wonderful. This is the most important and oft quoted portion of the second chapter, the description of the enlightened one. Okay, so here we are. The blessed Lord says, 55, a person who has let go of all personal desires and is utterly content in the truth of Atman, the true self, is one of steady wisdom. Not I. 56. A person undisturbed by difficulties, who doesn't yearn to be happy, who has no favorites, no fear, and no anger, is a sage of steady wisdom. Not I. 57. Whoever is free of all mental attachments, who is not excited when good things happen, nor dejected when evil comes, and is poised in wisdom. Not I. 58. When one can withdraw the senses from sense objects, like a tortoise draws within, one's wisdom is unwavering. Yeah. Hi. A nice commentary. A nice example is given here that will also illustrate pratyahara in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. When your senses are completely under your control, you may see sense objects, but you are able to withdraw your senses from them. The senses should not draw you out against your will. That's pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses from the sense objects. 59. By abstaining from sense objects, they will drop away. Longing for them will also disappear upon realizing the highest truth. Commentary. You may control the senses, but still impressions from the past desires, the vasanas, are there. You may not be enjoying the objects of your desires, but that doesn't mean that you are completely free from them. You may have a little longing still. Sometimes when people fast, even though they're away from food, unfortunately they think more about food. So just staying away is not enough. The question really is, how do we get rid of this longing, these vasanas? The answer is not by force, but by real understanding of the truth. Ask yourself, who is eating the food? Am I, or is my body? It's the body that longs for the food. I'm not hungry. I'm not thirsty. When you're rooted in this truth, then even the longing goes away. My master used to sing, I'm not the body, not the mind. Immortal self, I am. When you're rooted in that, then you'll look at the body and say, hey, you're not really hungry. You've eaten enough. There's a lot of storage. Finish up all that, and I'll give you some more later on. And you won't dwell on it. That's why they say when you realize the Supreme, even the longing goes away. As long as you're still striving, be extremely careful not to be deceived by overconfidence thinking. Welcome to New York. I have achieved, so as long as you're still striving, be extremely careful not to be deceived by overconfidence thinking, I have achieved everything, now I'm completely in control. You can be deceived at any time, Sri Krishna warns. 60. If the senses become excited, Arjuna, they will carry away even the mind of a wise person aiming for perfection. 61. But the yogi learns to control the senses by meditating on me, the highest goal. As the senses come under control, the yogi's wisdom becomes steady. True. Commentary. Now he gives a chain reaction that shows how people ultimately destroy themselves. It is a beautiful part of the Gita to remember always. 62. From brooding on sense objects, attachment to them arises. Out of that attachment, personal desire is born, and from desire, anger appears. 63. Anger confuses the thinking process, which in turn disturbs memory. When memory fails, reasoning is ruined, and when reason is gone, one is lost. Commentary. Where does it all begin? Brooding on a sense object. When you start brooding, you end up perishing. Here's an example. You go to work every day by the same road. You see many people coming and going along your way, but you don't even notice them. All of a sudden, one form gets registered in your mind. Ah, who is this lovely woman? Then you walk on, but something is fixed there. Who could that be? The next day you happen to see the same woman and your interest grows a little more. Within a couple of days, your desire to find her address and telephone number. You're hoping for a date. Somehow you come to know that someone else is already courting her. What happens then? Competition arises. When you see him getting in your way, you become angry. The anger ruins your discrimination because you're mad for her, and enmity develops, and you want to destroy the other suitor. You get into a terrible fight. The law doesn't understand that it comes from a mental fixation, and you are both put in jail. Life gets ruined. Everything begins with the mind. When the mind becomes attached to something, you don't usually question your mind. You don't analyze it. The mind wants it, so you just chase after it. That's what's meant here. Not that you should totally avoid looking for good friendships, but let the desires be under your control. Don't just be carried away by the mind. That's the teaching. Personal desire creates anger. It's temporary insanity. Basically, there's no difference between one and the other. If you are temporarily insane, they say you're mad. 64. But the yogi who has disciplined the mind, has control of the senses, can move about amidst sense objects, free of attraction and aversion, settling more deeply in tranquility. 65. In that tranquility, all sorrows fall away, because the discerning intellect of a calm mind is soon secure in equilibrium. 66. There's neither wisdom nor meditation in an always changing mind. Without a meditative, one-pointed mind, there's no peace. And without peace of mind, how can anyone be happy? Without a commentary, without peace, how can you find happiness? These slokas speak of the yukta, the person of discrimination. In that discriminative knowledge, you get the right understanding, which makes the mind profound. Without that profundity, there's no peace. And when there's no peace, there's no happiness. We are all looking for happiness, but unfortunately, we're not looking where the Gita tells us to. We look outside of ourselves. We look outside ourselves for it. The very fact that we're looking outside disturbs the mind. But if we realize that happiness is reflected in tranquil mind, then we won't disturb our minds even to chase happiness. It's there in us always. 67. Like a ship tossed helplessly about by a gale, a mind subject to the roving senses loses all discrimination. Viveka. 68. When the senses are completely withdrawn from the sense objects, Arjuna, then the mind is poised perfectly. 69. What seems night to others is a state of awakening for one with a mind thus disciplined, and what appears day to others is night to the sage who knows the self. Here's another beautiful verse that says in simple words, what is real to an enlightened person seems unreal to an ordinary person. And what seems real to an ordinary person is unreal to enlightened person. Naturally then, enlightened ones call the others insane, and we call him or her insane. When people want to lead the spiritual life of renunciation, you say, I don't know why they're letting go of all of this. They could enjoy life so beautifully. They have wealth, youth, and everything. I don't know why they're renouncing everything. Why can they live like normal people? Are they crazy? They ask the seeker, are you crazy? You're young, you're beautiful, you have everything. With all your beauty, you could win a beauty contest. Why do you want to waste it? As if youth and beauty can't be utilized for a higher purpose, and as if winning contests were the goal in life. Now Krishna gives an example of the ocean. 70. Someone with personal desires will not experience true peace. But when all desires merge, like different rivers flowing into the vast, deep ocean, then peace is easily realized. Commentary. The ocean is contented. It never sends invitations to the rivers. It's just happy by itself. And that's the reason why all the rivers want to flow into it. They say, you seem to be so happy while we're restless. By coming to join you, we'll be happy. So they all run into the ocean. The ocean doesn't want anything. It's not after the rivers. Therefore, the rivers are after it. Grayson, shh. Therefore, the rivers are after it. That's one important point. Another is that even after all the rivers have come into the ocean retains the same contentment. It doesn't get excited. Look how great I am. All the rivers are coming into me. The Missouri has come, the Mississippi is here, the Ganges also has come. Excitement disturbs even the contented mind. 71. Peace is experienced by anyone who lives without longing for anything, free of all personal desires, and with no individual sense of me and mine. Commentary. Nope. 72. This Arjuna is the absolute state on experiencing it. There are no further questions. If established in this awareness at the time of bodily death, there's just the merging into the oneness of God. Commentary. This ends the second chapter. Isn't it sweet to study the Gita? But please remember that the entire Gita is right there in front of you. The best book to read is the book of life. With that book, you will be constantly learning everything. Written scriptures are only here to show that since they also say the same things, we can trust our experiences. Yes, here in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna also said the same thing. Okay, then, probably it must be right. We want an authority to confirm our experiences. Scriptural study is good for confirming our convictions. Thus ends the second disclosure of Bhagavad Gita, the Science of Yoga, entitled The Yoga of Wisdom. Om.